Marine and his K9 discovered the amazing truth. 8-year-old girl abandoned in a blizzard, revealed. The wind howled like a wounded animal outside Jake's childhood home, a familiar yet haunting sound that sent chills down his spine. Inside, the silence was deafening, each moment a tangible reminder of the tension that had stretched between him and his father. Now back in this small, snowbound town in rural Montana, after a grueling deployment, Jake felt like a ghost in his own life, weighed down by memories of a past he couldn't escape. With only Max, his steadfast canine partner by his side, Jake wrestled with a storm inside, one that threatened to consume him. "Your father hasn't even called since you got back," the thought scolded him as he paced the perimeter of the living room, the floorboards creaking underfoot. He remembered his father's disappointed gaze the last time they spoke, a silent accusation that Jake wasn't the son he'd hoped for. The memories clawed at him, stirring that all-too-familiar cocktail of regret and anger in his gut. He'd traded his youth for medals and gunfire, and now he was desperate to mend the gaping wounds all around him, especially the one where family used to be. Setting out on a routine patrol with Max, Jake trudged through the thick blanket of snow that shrouded the wilderness. As flurries swirled around them, blending day into night, the isolation settled like a heavy fog. Suddenly, Max halted, ears stiff, a low growl rumbling from his chest. Jake's pulse quickened. Something was wrong. He instinctively felt the darkness waiting beyond the trees. Rushing forward, they stepped into a clearing where a haunting sight emerged. A small figure shivering against the harsh cold. A girl no older than 8, wrapped in ragged clothes. Instincts surged. "Lucy," he whispered, closing the distance. What was she doing out here? Clutched to her chest was a worn photograph, and for a fleeting moment, he became acutely aware of her fragility, igniting a fierce protectiveness within him. As he scooped her up in his arms, the weight of her vulnerability settled on him like a mantle, one he wished to keep safe against the biting wind. Inside the warmth of his home, as Lucy's story unraveled, Jake felt an even deeper storm brewing within himself. They went missing? During a camping trip? Lucy's soft voice trembled. A sense of injustice overwhelmed him. The town had pushed her plight aside, labeled it a lesser priority amid its own economic despair. The anger surged hotter within him. He'd tasted the bitterness of being forgotten, first as a soldier, now as a son. It was a horror he refused to allow another human being, especially not this innocent girl. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a vow simmering in the depths of his heart, Jake launched into an investigation, that fire rekindling a purpose he thought long extinguished. Each step he took alongside Lucy felt like a delicate balancing act, drawing him closer to a painful truth about her family, while forcing him to confront his own estrangement. Human connections that had lain dormant stirred to life as he interacted with the townsfolk, many of whom echoed his own fears of neglect and loss. But as he unearthed hiding places and old whispers, festering resentments began to surface. Truths he wished remained buried. The emotional weight grew unbearable, reaching a boiling point he never anticipated. Gulping in the icy air, Jake could barely keep steady on his feet. The hint of resolve wavered, overshadowed by an internal battle roaring for his attention. Just when a clue shimmered on the horizon, an incoming call shattered the fragile moment. Jake glanced at his phone, the familiar number sending a jolt through him, his father's voice echoing in his mind. It was a call he dreaded but yearned for. He hesitated, heart racing. Then a massive snowdrift collapsed nearby, an ominous shadow stretching across the path ahead. He and Lucy stood frozen, wrapped in uncertainty. The weight of revelation hung heavy, the storm within him raging, whispering a truth he was not sure he was ready to face. The phone rang again, an urgent reminder of Jake's unresolved past. His heart thudded against his chest, the tension thick like the snow enveloping the world outside. He glanced down at Lucy, her wide eyes filled with concern and uncertainty. At that moment, her need became a beacon, pulling him back from the precipice of apprehension. He had a responsibility to her now, a chance to turn his own pain into something meaningful. "Stay close," he whispered, setting the phone on the table beside him. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of disconnection that had marred his soul for years. The call could wait. With renewed determination, Jake poured himself into the task of uncovering the mystery surrounding Lucy's family. Each new piece of information felt like a thread in a tapestry, weaving together their disparate lives. He tracked down the last known whereabouts of Lucy's parents, making his way to the rotting remains of the campsite where they last ventured. The angry winds seemed to echo his tumult, swirling resentment vented from long-buried memories. Every rustle of branches ignited a sense of urgency to locate the answers. While standing before the charred outline of an abandoned fire pit, he felt a kinship with the ghosts trapped within the echoes of the past. Every scar on that ground reflected his own. Amidst peeling bark and chilling remembrances, Jake's determination sharpened. But suddenly sound shattered the silence, a distant commotion, voices mingling with the wind. Curious, he moved closer to the source, instinctively keeping Lucy behind him as the adrenaline coursed through his veins. Rounding a bend, he encountered a small clustering of townsfolk gathered around a crumbling sign, a makeshift memorial for Lucy's family. Anger bubbled beneath the surface as he listened to their hushed tones, drifting into accusations and mistrust. They should have been more careful. Why didn't they report it sooner? The conversations twisted like barbed wire around him, each probe a reminder of his own fragility. Jake stepped forward, emboldened by a fearlessness he hadn't felt in years. "Stop blaming them," he called out, his voice stronger than he felt. "They are victims of circumstance just like Lucy. We need to find them." A scatter of murmurs met his call, but the resolute nods that followed were encouraging. He challenged the internal battle that screamed for him to retreat. These people were weighing the burden of judgment over compassion, a familiar battle he had fought daily. With every moment, Jake realized the investigation wasn't just about rescuing Lucy's family, it was about rescuing himself. By confronting the heart of the town, he was peeling back layers of his own past. There was something to gain in connection, a lesson lurking beneath the snow. As the sky darkened, clarity began to seep into Jake's thoughts. He was no longer just a soldier or a son grappling with disappointment. He was a protector, driven by righteous anger and an untamed desire for justice. Skills honed in the military now took root in his personal life, reawakening a sense of purpose. But with each revelation and connection, the emotional toll mounted, leaving shadows of doubt lingering in his mind. Ego and pride wanted to clash with his newfound empathy, the memories of isolation pushing against the hope he was beginning to cultivate. There was so much more than Lucy's family at stake. It was about confronting the ghosts of his own past. As he turned to leave the gathering, energized and emboldened, a chilling realization gripped him. Jake was on the verge of facing not just the truth about Lucy's family, but also the reality of his own fractured identity. The implications of his reluctance to connect loomed larger than life. Then amidst the heavy silence, his phone buzzed again, this time vibrating intensely against the cold ground. He picked it up, anxiety coiling in his chest as he saw the name flash across the screen, a second chance meeting with his father. His pulse quickened. The moment was hanging, suspended like the very storm that had brought Lucy into his life. He could either run from this call, burying past grievances deeper, or he could finally confront the man who had shaped so much of who he was. The air crackled with tension as he took a steadying breath. Jake grasped Max's harness tighter, determination settling like steel in his spine. The time had come to face both his father and his past. But what he didn't know was how this encounter would unfold the truth about himself. Jake stood motionless in the gathering dusk, the phone still humming in his hand. Everything felt charged, alive, as if the frozen landscape around him mirrored the tension within. He turned away from the thrumming urgency of the past, feeling Lucy's small hand slip into his, grounding him. The sensation ignited a protective instinct that transcended fear, urging him to confront the looming presence of his father, the man whose shadow had loomed over his life for far too long. He began to pace as he weighed his options, each step crunching on the frostbitten earth, reverberating like a heartbeat in the stillness. Would confronting his father mean reopening wounds that felt too raw? Memories of disappointment and neglect flashed through his mind. Yet standing there in the encroaching dark, he recognized that this moment was not merely about reckoning with grief. It was an opportunity to redefine himself. Thoughts of Lucy pushed him forward. She deserved clarity, closure. He would fight for that. Moreover, he needed to confront the sulfurous air of his childhood instead of allowing it to suffocate him any longer. Jake inhaled deeply, envisioning a life unencumbered by regret and disappointment. He would face his father, not as the scared little boy who had sought his approval, but as a man who understood the weight of responsibility, both as a protector of Lucy and as a figure of self-worth. Jake turned to Lucy, who was watching him intently, each flicker of her eyes conveying silent encouragement. The bond blossoming between them continued to evolve. It wasn't just about her missing family anymore. It became a journey of mutual healing, unraveling and recompiling both their lives to craft something stronger. For the first time, he felt the ripple of hope. Perhaps the confrontation with his father could dissolve some of the barriers he had constructed around himself. His phone buzzed again, jolting him from his reverie. With a trembling hand, he answered. "Dad?" The silence on the other end stretched on, riddled with uncertainties and unspoken apologies. Jake's mind raced, rehearsing a tirade of accusations he'd bottled up for years. But they evaporated into the winter air, leaving him with only genuine inquiry. "Why did you leave? I need to understand." The voice cracked like ice, a hesitant echo of recognition. "Jake. Jake's heart hammered. This was the impetus he'd long since desired, a chance to lay it all bare, to understand the man behind the facade of indifference. The military had trained him to lead with purpose, yet how could he confront this specter of his childhood without letting the pain overwhelm his voice? He focused on the facts, the reasons that might lay behind his father's choices. Those threads once hidden in the fog of resentment began to shimmer faintly beneath that veil. As the call progressed, Jake began to unravel the truth of how his father's choices had been rooted in a war fought long before he ever donned a uniform. The revelation buzzed in him, tempting, beckoning him toward an understanding that may reshape his sense of self. With every hesitant exchange, Jake felt the weight of both their lives start to shift. The battlefield wasn't only external, it ran deeper, entangling their fractured bond. Learning about his father's struggles and choices began to crack the ice around Jake's heart. It was no longer simply about his abandonment. Now he recognized it as a failure born of personal battles, igniting the desire for empathy amidst his remaining anger. But just as he began to feel the thaw, a sudden interruption rang out, an ominous crash that shattered the moment. The line went dead, leaving him breathless. Lucy gripped his hand, sensing the abrupt change in his demeanor, her innocence a steady anchor against his rising dread. What lay ahead? The shadows cast by his father's revelations now dimmed in comparison to the unknown threat lurking just beyond the horizon. Jake felt the full weight of responsibility pressing down on him. His past caught up to him, and yet it was no longer just a path of self-discovery. Involved were choices that could change the course of Lucy's fate. The stakes had risen. Would he embrace the finality of his tumultuous history, or let it consume him and Lucy alongside that distant echo of impending danger? Resolute and steeled for what lay ahead, he led Lucy away from the cold ground, determination coursing through his veins. Each step propelled them both forward into the thickening shadows, towards the uneasy truth waiting just beyond the tree line. What had been revealed was stirring to life inside him, wrestling against the urgency of impending catastrophe. As they pressed on, Jake's resolve solidified. Something in him was awakening, the fight spurred not only by his past, but strengthened by the promise of Lucy's future. The phone call had laid bare doubt, but deepened connections worked to fortify him. He was ready, no matter the price. But lurking in the tension of each heartbeat was the nagging question that loomed larger than the shadows around them. What danger awaited them in the darkness, poised to disrupt the fragile peace they were beginning to build? Jake moved through the thickening shadows, each step echoing his determination. The lifeless trees that surrounded them seemed to whisper warnings, casting paranoid thoughts into his mind. Yet, it was Lucy, with her tiny hand clutching his, who grounded him. He could not allow the specters of the past, his father's abandonment, the childhood scars, to overshadow the responsibility he felt now. This was not just about him anymore. It was crucial to protect Lucy from whatever unknown threat had just crashed into their fragile world. The moment the phone call ended, the fear of invisibility and powerlessness crashed down around him like the falling snow from the ancient trees lining the path. Jake could almost feel the weight of memories crashing in waves, wanting to pull him under. Yet the glimmer of recent revelations about his father still flickered in the corners of his mind, urging him to lean into that understanding rather than retreat backward. He had unearthed a form of empathy, a combination of confusion and clarity that allowed the former feelings of anger to wash into insignificance within his heart. "Stay close, Lucy," he instructed, his voice steady, though internally, doubt cascaded like relentless waves. He scanned the surroundings, keenly aware of every sound, the rustle of leaves, the crunch of snow underfoot. An instinct honed by years on the battlefield whispered that danger was near, pushing him to act with both caution and resolve. "Do you think it's a wild animal?" Lucy's voice was small, barely breaking the stillness. Her innocent question momentarily drew him away from his own spiraling thoughts. It twisted at his heart. He wished to shield her from any fear, yet they couldn't ignore the reality lurking in the night. "No, it's something worse," he realized aloud. Whatever had crashed, the edges of panic flickering at the fringes of his mind, was likely not a beast of nature, but a reminder of the chaos he had turned his back on in leaving his father's home. The old arguments had dissolved. Now they were threading through to him in a menacing form he couldn't yet identify. Suddenly a guttural growl sliced through the air, reverberating through the shadows. Lucy squeezed his hand tighter. "Jake, stay behind me." The words were curt, clipped, but necessary. Jake's heart raced. His instinct to protect surged to the forefront. This time, he would not turn away. He would confront whatever darkness lay ahead. The shadows broke apart as he approached the source of the sound, each footfall whispering caution. His breath shallow, he focused on the surroundings. He would not let fear dictate this moment. The time had come to face the uncertainty head-on. A creeping sensation slithered into his gut, a blend of trepidation and newfound strength. What if this darkness held secrets about himself, hidden capabilities waiting to be discovered? What if facing whatever awaited could ensure Lucy's safety, and in doing so, unlock within him an aspect he had seldom considered? Jake squared his shoulders, embracing the weight of that responsibility, feeling the stirrings of a purpose he hadn't acknowledged before. Then, out of the shadows, he saw it, a looming figure, obscured, yet unmistakably human. His heart raced, for it was clear that this wasn't the mystical danger he had imagined. Instead, something deeper, a foreshadowing of confrontation was brewing, tethered to his father's past and directly spinning into the present. "Who's there?" Jake demanded, his voice confident, despite the adrenaline surging through him. In that moment the figure stepped forward, illuminated in the fading light, and each second stretched into an eternity. Jake's thoughts whirled, dissecting through fear and curiosity, straddling the line of confrontation and revelation. What waited ahead demanded his attention, threatening to shatter the very foundation of the newfound understanding that had begun to solidify with Lucy. Would this confrontation lead to clarity or unleash chaos? As the figure approached, Jake took a deep breath, a mixture of resolve and dread tightening his chest. The moment of truth loomed closer, and inside him, something primal and protective ignited once more. A spark that told him that this was just the beginning. What lay ahead could either forge their futures or thrust them back into the uncertainty from which they had barely begun to escape. Jake squinted, straining to discern the figure emerging from the shadows. Heightened senses sharpened every detail. The uneven gait, The pale face twisted into an expression Jake struggled to recognize. Memories flared momentarily. He tried to conjure the silhouette of his father from long-ago arguments, but the recollection twisted uncomfortably. "Jake!" The figure's voice cut through the tension. It was hoarse, almost desperate. "It's me. It's your father." The words landed like a blow, striking a raw nerve. Jake's instinct was to recoil, every ounce of anger and betrayal threatening to surface. But Lucy's small hand was still in his, grounding him, binding him to the present. Her innocent gaze flitted between the man emerging from the darkness and her father, punctuating an unbearable silence. "Why are you here?" Jake demanded, his voice steady, though every muscle tensed as he eyed the man who had once shattered his childhood. Conflicting emotions churned within him, a tempest of fear, anger, and curiosity battling for dominance. "I prayed I could find you," his father replied, each word marred with desperation. "I never wanted to leave, Jake. You have to believe me." Jake's mind swirled with a cacophony of disbelief. The man standing before him had abandoned him when he needed a father most, seemingly vanishing into a void Jake had learned to navigate alone. Yet here he was, returning amidst the winter shadows, like some ghost from his past demanding attention. "What does it even matter?" Jake pressed, frustration boiling beneath the surface. "You left us. You left me." Lucy tugged on his sleeve, her eyes wide. "Dad, let's go. We should just leave." "Hush, Lucy," Jake murmured, not even looking down. He had to face this. He had felt so strong in making decisions, in protecting her from the darkness of their past. But his father's unexpected return had shaken the foundation he was trying to build. "You don't get to come back and act like everything is fine." His father took a hesitant step forward, any semblance of authority crushed under the weight of Jake's ire. "It's not fine. I'm not the same person I was back then. I've changed. I've changed. Just like that." Jake scoffed, heart pounding. "You think you can just walk back into my life and it will erase what you did?" Behind this veil of anger lay vulnerable pangs of longing and fear. Could he allow a connection, a reconciliation, even the start of understanding? He felt a part of himself wanting to reach for the past, to seek out a bond they'd never had. Deep down, the instinct to protect Lucy warred with an inkling of hope to redefine his own narrative. But as Jake's resolve twisted and tightened, another growl, low and menacing, sliced through the air. Adrenaline spiked once more, reviving instincts honed in battle. The primal urges to protect surged back, sharpening his senses. Whatever darkness loomed now, be it past or present, would not take root without a fight. "Enough!" he barked, turning momentarily from his father to scrutinize the woods that loomed like an impending storm gathering strength. Lucy pressed against him, searching his expression for reassurance. The man before him needed to understand. They all needed to stay strong amidst the shadows. "Jake, listen," his father insisted, the urgency in his tone matching the thunderous beat of his own heart. "There are things happening, things you don't know. You have to trust me. It's not safe out here. For her." Trust, such a fragile word, particularly when shackled to betrayal. Jake wrestled against the tidal pull of years lost, now colliding with a present fraught with uncertainty and danger. As the growls grew closer, darker shapes flickered along the periphery. Jake felt the cruel paradox of his situation envelop him tighter. They were at the precipice of revelation, a crossroads where choice could forge their fates. The shadows were coming, both literal and figurative, and he had to decide. Would he open the door to understanding, or lock it away forever? "What do I have to do?" he asked finally, breathless and heavy with the weight of before and after colliding. The silence hung heavy, straining against the echoes of impending chaos. The moment had arrived, not to reconcile, but to unveil the strength he never knew he possessed, a strength that might protect them both from the unknown. With a shifting resolve, Jake felt the path ahead drawn in uncertain lines, each decision fracturing into a myriad of possible futures. Behind him, the growling intensified. Whatever truths emerged from the darkness would reveal more than just family ties. It would unravel the core of who he had become. As the shadows converged, a new question unfurled in his chest. A revelation far beyond this confrontation was imminent. What else had he hidden from himself? What was waiting to be uncovered? Time slowed as the shadows merged with the encroaching darkness. Jake's heart raced, the weight of his father's presence threading tension through the air like a taut bowstring. Every instinct in him screamed for action, a clash of familial entitlement and the primal urge to protect Lucy. The trees, gnarled and twisted, appeared to lean in closer, eavesdropping on the tumult within him. "Follow me," he said, the command ringing with authority, but it felt misplaced, almost like an echo of the boy he had once been. He turned, leading Lucy away from the specter of their past, but his father's voice reached through the night. "Jake, please, you don't understand." "Shut up," Jake snapped over his shoulder, anger flaring again. He pressed on, feeling more like a soldier in combat than a son trying to reconcile with the broken pieces of his legacy. The growls swelled. Whatever lurked behind them seemed to sense his conflict, capitalizing on his chaos for its own end. "Dad!" Lucy's small voice broke through his thoughts, innocent but firm. He halted, turning back to her. "We can't. We have to listen," she insisted, her wide eyes shimmering with determination that softened the fierce edge in his heart. "What if he knows something?" Jake exhaled sharply. It was a moment loaded with choice. Either stay entrenched in old disdain or plunge into the quagmire of their shared history. He searched the depths of Lucy's expression for clarity, longing for the courage she displayed. Stripping away the armor forged by years of hurt required more inner strength than Jake had anticipated. "Fine," he relented, the word barely escaping his lips. "But I'm holding you to your word. You come with me, and if anything seems off, I promise," Lucy replied, her voice unwavering. With that pact, Jake turned back to face the man who once held dominion over his childhood fears. "What do you want?" he demanded, the blade of anger curving toward curiosity. "I'm here to warn you," his father replied, the tremor in his voice revealing layers of anxiety. "About the threats, and they're real. There's a reason I left." The growls closed in, feral and resonant against the bark of the trees. Jake's heart thumped in his chest, an impending sense of doom encasing him in its grip. "Stop! Speak plainly. I don't have time for shadows." "I was in too deep. I made mistakes, and I thought leaving would keep you safe," his father confessed, words tumbling out as if they were a confession long overdue. "There are things I can't explain now, but they will come for you." Despite the weight of his father's admission, Jake found himself poised on the edge of skepticism. Why should he trust the man who had vanished during his greatest hour of need? Yet deep down, he knew that the shadows were indeed closing in, blurring the lines between the past and present. "Why should I listen to you?" he demanded. "You abandoned me. Because you don't have to emulate my mistakes. You need to learn from them," his father urged, voice thick with desperation. "We're stronger together." Silencing the growls howled louder, threatening to drown out reason. In that moment of uncertainty, Jake felt the gravity of possibility. Could he learn from the man who had once failed him, or would that put Lucy at greater risk? A flicker of movement caught Jake's eye. A dark shape weaving through the edge of the trees, and he instinctively stepped protectively in front of Lucy. "We have to go," he ordered, feeling the urgency spike, pushing aside the emotional clutter. "We can't just run," his father insisted, desperation thickening the air between them. "You need to know why they're coming." "Then tell me what you know," Jake snapped. "What do I need to prepare for?" Above the growling now rumbling like thunder, he felt the shadows inching closer, ensnaring their choices in whispering gloom. The confrontation was no longer just about family. It was a question of survival, of discovering resilience within betrayal. As his father opened his mouth to speak, the darkness around them surged, and Jake felt, with piercing clarity, he was no longer just facing his father. They were all standing against something much larger, a reckoning that could redefine them all. What had Jake hidden from himself about his own strength? What was he willing to sacrifice to protect Lucy? With those questions coursing through his mind like fire, a resolve solidified deep within. They had to confront the truth together, or they were destined to be consumed by it. "Let's figure this out," Jake said, determination flaring in the depths of his heart. Together, the shadows loomed ominously as they prepared to confront a long-buried mystery. Would the encounter reveal hidden capabilities that could reshape their fates? Or would it culminate in chaos? Each step forward carried them closer to the inevitable revelation. Jake's heart thundered in his ears as he turned to face the shadowy figure that loomed behind his father. It was like stepping onto a battlefield. Every nerve in his body tingled with a sense of impending conflict. The growls, once distant echoes, now vibrated through his bones, insistent and primal. He needed clarity. He needed a plan. But the arrival of the unforeseen mixed with the specter of his father brought with it a whirlpool of emotions. Can this fractured man truly offer guidance? Or was this another chance for betrayal cloaked in the guise of family ties? "Speak," Jake demanded, his voice layered with authority but laced with uncertainty. His father swallowed hard. "I can explain, but we're out of time." "Then start talking." "They hunt us because of who I was," his father declared, his eyes darting toward the encroaching shadows. "I thought leaving was best, but I see now. They are relentless. You have inherited more than just my blood. You've inherited my enemies." Enemy. The word hammered against Jake's consciousness, slicing through the lingering fog of doubt. This was no longer about the past or forgiveness. It was a matter of survival. His first instinct was to protect Lucy, but a weight settled on his shoulders, the burden of inherited responsibility. "What do I need to do?" Jake asked, the ferocity in his voice blurring with desperation. His father took a step closer, eyes steady. "You need to harness your strength. They seek power, but they underestimate the strength born from unity. Trust Lucy. Trust in what you can accomplish together." Summer storms had never frightened him as much as standing here, grappling with a father he barely knew and the uncertain fate of his sister. Could he draw on the strength promised by unity? Or would he allow fear to steer his decisions? "Together," he echoed softly, letting the word linger as if it were a secret spell. Could he reshape the destiny looming over them by combining the fragile bond he now shared with Lucy and this unfamiliar figure of authority? As the growling crescendoed, punctuated by the rustling of leaves, Jake felt the ground shift beneath him. The shadows twisted into grotesque patterns, and he sensed a deeper truth unfurling. Their adversaries prowled near, and the visceral realization hit him. Outnumbered and possibly outmatched, they needed to plan. Then, as though struck by inspiration, Jake turned to Lucy. "Do you remember how you used to train with your dog? The way you learned to give commands? The trust it built?" Her brow furrowed in understanding, and nodding slowly she replied, "Yes, it was about communication and teamwork." "Exactly. We need to communicate with each other and use what tools we have," he replied, newfound conviction growing in his chest. "We have to fight our way through this darkness together." His father's face split into a strange, almost bewildered grin. "What you just said, a child's training can foster an adult's fight. You're on the right path." Jake felt the weight of responsibility shift slightly. If his father recognized capability in him, perhaps he wasn't as lost as he believed. But doubt lingered like a shadow at his heels. As the growls multiplied, he shot a glance at Lucy, assuring himself yet again that she was his priority. "Stay close," he instructed, fear mixing with determination. In that moment, everything felt tied to the urgency of the moment. They had to prepare, mentally, physically, emotionally. He took a few steps back, hands poised in readiness, scanning the shadows that seemed to flicker and pulse. "Let's draw them out. Whatever they are, they won't hide forever." With those words, the atmosphere crackled with unspoken threats and untapped power. The challenge spiraled into focus, becoming not just an external fight, but an internal awakening for Jake. As he rallied his thoughts and fortitude, a question pierced through his determination. Was he ready for the truth that awaited him, not only about the lurking dangers but also about himself? The first shape broke through the darkness, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. The moment of reckoning had arrived. What would it reveal? Strength or the depths of despair? Jake's breath hitched as the shadow approached, its form materializing into something almost anthropomorphic. It was an astonishing blend of darkness and nightmare, two glowing eyes piercing through the gloom. Instinctively, he took a defensive stance, adrenaline coursing through him, urging him to react. But before a thought could fully form, a flash of light in the periphery jolted his focus back to his father. "Listen to me, Jake," his father urged, urgency sharpening his voice. "They're more than just creatures. They're reflections of us and our weaknesses. Every fear you harbor will prey upon you tonight, but there's strength within doubt." Reflections? Jake pondered the words rapidly, grappling with their significance. As he faced the advancing shape, it dawned on him that his greatest enemy might not just be the beast before him, but his own hesitation. "Trust your instincts," his father continued. "Every experience you've had, every moment of doubt, channel it into focus. What you've learned, what you are capable of, that's your weapon." What have I learned? Jake's mind raced through the fragments of training with Lucy, the scattered memories of life's challenges faced alone and together. Each simple moment was an accumulation of power. Holding on to that thought grounded him, illuminating the path ahead. "Draw them in," Jake murmured, turning back to Lucy, who stood steadfast at his side. In her eyes he saw understanding, and with it, unwave-like resolve. "We're not alone. We stand with our strengths." With newfound confidence, Jake realized he could use collaboration as a means of defense. He began reliving their shared experiences, forming a cohesive strategy that felt almost instinctual. "We'll distract it and lead it toward the moonlight. The visibility will give us an edge and allow us to see what we're really up against." Jake motioned for Lucy to flank left. A flick of the wrist communicated all that was needed. There was no time for elaborate planning. Every second counted as the growl transformed into something more coherent, an almost sinister greeting. At his father's side, Jake could feel a surge of protective pride welling within him. He didn't want Lucy to bear the weight of their fears alone. They could redefine their narrative. "We're stronger together," he reminded her quietly. In unison, they began to execute their plan, each twitch of their movements choreographed by necessity. As Jake readied to confront whatever lay ahead, a flicker of doubt crept in again. Would their unity be enough? "Remember, face it head on," his father whispered. "Reflect your strength back at it." With those words reverberating in his mind, Jake squared his shoulders. He felt the pressure of expectation from all sides, the encompassing responsibility pressing down like a weight he had always dodged. The truth was dawning upon him. One illuminating thought grasped even amidst the chaos. He had power beyond mere survival. It was time to unleash it. As the creature lunged, fangs bared, Jake's heart pounded ferociously against his ribcage. Instinct propelled him with a sharp clarity. He shouted, "Now!" signaling to Lucy. In that critical moment, an overwhelming rush surged through him. Fear was washed away by the sheer potency of determination. It wasn't just about combating the enemy stalking them. It was about dismantling the shadows of his own corruption. But as the beast barreled toward him, the reality hit hard. Was this fight merely physical, or would it force him to confront deeper truths within himself? The answer simmered just beneath the surface. With every ounce of will, Jake steadied himself for impact, prepared to challenge not just the creature but the faceless fears that had shackled him for so long. But would he emerge victorious, or face an awakening he could neither foresee nor control? The night hung heavy with uncertainty, as every heartbeat pulsed with the anticipation of what was yet to come. The weight of the moment hung in the air like a suspended breath. As the creature charged, Jake saw not just its jagged teeth, but the chaotic reflection of his anxiety, the fear of failure, haunting memories twisting into grotesque forms. "Now!" His command erupted, sharp and ringing. But it was not just a signal to Lucy, it was a rallying cry to himself. The adrenaline rushed through him, igniting more than just a fight-or-flight response. It sparked a decision. He would not let this creature consume him, nor the doubts that had lingered uninvited for too long. Jake moved instinctively, stepping into the path of the beast. It lunged, and in that instant, He allowed his affection for Lucy, his memories with his father, and within himself to coalesce. He lunged to the right, narrowly avoiding the impact as the creature whizzed by him, the rush of air cold against his skin. "Draw it in! Remember your instincts," he thought, the words echoing deep within. Instead of retreating, he moved forward, inviting the creature into the moonlight. With a deliberate motion, he maneuvered himself closer, the glow illuminating the beast. A reflection crafted from darkness, yes, but also from the fabric of his fears. With each step back towards the light, the reality of the situation crystallized. The creature was nothing more than a distorted reflection, a grotesque semblance of everything he had ever feared about himself. Jake found himself facing a choice he didn't know existed until now, whether to succumb or to confront. This was no longer simply a battle against a beast. It was an opportunity for confrontation within himself. "Lucy!" he shouted, his voice stronger, more filled with purpose. "Encircle it!" As Lucy adapted to the demand, Jake hastened his focus. He began channeling his apprehensions into deliberate actions. The memories of training sessions flooded back. When Lucy had tackled challenging obstacles, each instance manifested as small triumphs along the way. Those moments weren't mere successes, they were lessons in tenacity. The creature hesitated as if sensing the collective resolve forming around it. Jake's heart raced, not out of fear, but from a burning determination. The realization that everything he and Lucy had experienced had led to this point. He was capable of this. A flicker of doubt still lingered, but it was eclipsed by a fierce will to reclaim authority over his fears. "Show it your light!" he shouted, bolstered by the building momentum. His mind raced, mapping out their next instinctive moves, orchestrating them seamlessly. They would lead the creature deeper into the moonlight's embrace. With Lucy's swift movements, the creature grew more erratic, cornered now by the very essence of what Jake had deemed his biggest vulnerability. Realization washed over him. It wouldn't just be about physical defeat. It would be a profound evolution beyond what he knew. As they danced in tandem, Jake realized a hidden aspect to his strategy. Vulnerability itself could become a source of strength. With every agile maneuver he executed, he pushed deeper into the core of his doubt, each step overcoming barriers he had erected to protect himself over time. The fear transformed into raw energy, propelling them forward. Then, as if time itself slowed, the creature surged once more. This was the defining moment. Jake stood firm, preparing once more for confrontation, ready to draw the light closer. And as the beast lunged, he fortified his mind, preparing to not only face the enemy, but confront the very limitations he had crafted inside. Could he shatter the shadow and emerge authentic, unbound by previous constraints? Or would this fight betray him, plunging him deeper into self-doubt? The air thickened with uncertainty, and Jake's resolve solidified, propelling him towards what lay ahead. But in the final heartbeats before impact, he caught a sight of something just beyond the creature. A flicker of movement, an unwelcome surprise lurking within the dark. What revelation would it bring to light? And could he truly stand against two demons? One external, one internal. Jake braced himself against the rush of the creature, adrenaline and fear coiling tightly within him. But this time, he felt something shift. The darkness, which had threatened to swallow him, began to take on a different hue. He was no longer just standing at the edge of a fight. He was staring down an opportunity, a chance to demolish the barriers that imprisoned him. "Focus, Lucy! We will get through this!" he shouted, bolstered by the clarity of purpose that surged through his veins. Lucy nodded, understanding their shared mission was not merely to defeat the creature, but to unravel the fears that had tied them together in their past. The creature reared back, sensing the confidence they radiated, a strange cocktail of vulnerability and empowerment. Its growls reverberated through the frost-kissed air, but Jake could see its unpredictability. It was a manifestation of everything he had fought against in his life, an embodiment of all the doubts and disappointments. He could feel his father's presence grounding him, though their strained relationship felt delicate amidst the tumult. "Remember, Jake, they prey on uncertainty. Own your narrative," his father urged, his voice steady. Jake gathered his resolve, the words threading through him like a lifeline. This would not only be a moment of defense, but a reconciliation of sorts. a bridge built on understanding and strength. They had come together to repair a bond that was frayed by wounds long past. Now they would merge that with the very present danger. Jake took a deep breath, contrasting the weight of the past with the lightness of the moment. "Together!" he cried out again, directing Lucy to move to the flank. Their movements synchronized instinctively. As the creature lunged, they redirected, drawing it deeper into the clearing towards the moon's ethereal glow, illuminating its dark figure. In that moment, Jake pushed aside the anger from his father's abandonment. Instead, he focused on their shared goal. He found a strange comfort. This battle was for all of them. Each step they took together was a challenge against their shared demons. "Your past doesn't define you, Jake," echoed his father's trust, a mantra that fueled Jake's ascent. The creature hesitated again, its shape flickering in the light. "We are more than our mistakes." With renewed vigor, Jake engaged more directly, dancing forward. He drew strength from Lucy, who maneuvered subtly at his side, their connection a tapestry of strength and trust. The creature lunged again, but Jake had embraced the fight as an ally instead of a foe. And as they cornered it into the light, everything fused into a single moment of clarity. It wasn't the creature they needed to defeat, but the fears living within them, the history that had combined their lives through neglect. In an eruptive moment, Jake stepped forward with unfamiliar confidence, commanding the space and declaring a promise. "This ends now!" As he faced the creature fully, the shadows behind him seemed to dissipate. The creature opened its jaws, snarling ferociously, but instead of flinching, Jake stared directly into its eyes. The revelation struck him hard. Fear could evaporate in the face of understanding. "Let us be free!" he roared, channeling every fragment of doubt into clarity. And through that, he felt Lucy beside him, her hand crash against his as they surged forward. They charged, bold and unrelenting together. The creature recoiled, its existence faltered and festered under the illumination of Jake's conviction. In that fleeting, tearing moment, the battle shifted. As the creature appeared to retreat, the growls morphed into echoes of desperation. And suddenly, Jake found himself staring into nothingness. Not just the absence of the shadow, but the breaking heed they had enacted against their latent fears. The snow around them glimmered, not as a shroud of solitude but as a reminder of their journey. One steeped in loss yet alight with newfound determination. The shadows receded into forgotten corners. He felt the bond with Lucy solidify, an unspoken vow of understanding exchanged. Jake's growth was palpable. He had changed. He turned to Lucy, her wide eyes sparkling with relief. "We did it," he said, the weight of truth heavy, but finally liberating. The air felt charged, their victory sealing an unbreakable bond of family forged in crumbling fears. His father, standing at the periphery, watched, a ghost from a past now painted in hues of redemption. "You've become a stronger man than I could ever be," he said, emotion softening the edges of their earlier confrontations. "I couldn't have done it without Lucy," Jake replied, sincerity frosted with sincerity. "This was our fight." The night, once thick with hostility, now embraced a fragile peace. The cold wind whispered their fears could be conquered, with heart, with unity, and above all, with empathy. With hearts lighter than they had felt in years, they turned, stepping into the future together, each knowing they had broken free from shadows of the past. Jake emerged, not just as a soldier or a son, but as a protector, stamped with undeniable clarity, poised for a life unshackled from doubt. Now, with a sense of victorious completion, he stood tall beside Lucy, ready for whatever lay ahead, transformed and emboldened, ready to forge a new narrative and reclaim life on the other side of darkness. This was his moment, a profound restatement of purpose forged anew. They had all conquered their deepest fears together. And now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to truly feed the algorithm and show your support for powerful narratives of personal growth. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible ending, because your thoughts matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and ignite their own journey of transformation. Don't wait, even one more second. Your support matters.